Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Mignot. Each episode, I bring on a different amazing business leader who's doing game-changing work. And this is part of my 29 Days of Magic series, where I interview an amazing Black woman a day for 29 straight days during Black History Month in a campaign called 29 Days of Magic. And I'm so delighted to finally have on the podcast Diana Haussling, who's the SVP and GM of Consumer Experience and Growth at Colgate. She's basically the CMO. She has an amazing story and so much to tell. It's going to be a great conversation. I can't wait for you to take a listen. Hey, Diana.
Hey, Laura. So excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm feeling the magic already.
Warm and fuzzies. I love it. So, as you know, the first question's always the same. Answer's always amazing. I'm sure yours will be equally as. So, Diana, what was your first job?
Oh, well, my first real job was
Whatever you want.
rolling quarters for my dad who owned a laundromat was something that I did, and counting the money was something that I did as a really little kid, but I don't know if that counts as my first real job. My first real job was babysitting. I was old school.
Wow.
So yeah, babysitting, riding little kids to the neighborhood swim club, making sure they took them to the bathroom, getting them snacks. But that was it. That was my first real job because I found the love of independence, of having my own dollars to, take and buy what I wanted. So I started out early.
How old were you when you were babysitting?
Oh, I was like 12 when I started. 12 and 13 is when I started babysitting. Yep.
And you were like, my money. I like this.
Yes. Yes, which is one of my love languages that I always make sure that my bosses know. Money is one of them. So I learned it early.
Of course. I mean, mine too. Let's be real about it.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
You pay me to do something, I will do it.
I am a for-profit entity.
Always for my profit. And the profit of others, but my profit mostly. So I fully get that. Okay. So you go from babysitting and minding the store to where you are today. How did this all happen? What was that journey like?
Well, for me, I really, I come from a Caribbean household, and there is a real focus on education, and a real focus on not only education, but making sure that you get a really good job that can allow you to, afford a certain lifestyle and continue to progress. As you come into this country, the whole focus is making sure you're building success and progression for your family, and that was definitely something that I heard a lot in my household. I, however, went off course. You will know a lot about this. I went off course. I didn't become a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, or an engineer, which are all very much so approved Caribbean roles and jobs.
Yes.
I decided to go into something tricky called business. No one really knew what it was, let alone what marketing was.
Yes.
So I steered off course and ventured out of the sciences, unlike the rest of my family, or tech, and went into business and fell in love with not only business, but philosophy and understanding people. I started interning very early with the Hershey company and asked if I could stay on. And then from there, I, cut my teeth in CPG, and it just never let me go.
It never let you go. So, it's interesting because I think sometimes folks are like, well, what does that mean to be in business and marketing? Like, what was your job? What did you have to do?
So I actually started off, and Hershey has a great program that kind of brings you all the way through. So I actually started off working in the stores. They give you a territory, they give you a route, you go from store to store, and you're literally selling in displays. You're taking products out of the back room, you're filling the stock, you're restocking things so that it actually sells well in the store. And the cool thing about that experience is now, as I sit and I see today, I actually leverage a lot of what I learned there, because we do a lot of negotiation and hard work at the top of the house. But that could all fall down when it comes to executing in the store, because for most CPG organizations, you're very much dependent on this third party retailer. And you have to understand the decisions that are being made with boots on the ground in the store, and really understanding the decision of, are they even going to put my display up? What product is going on the floor? How do I even think about getting it so the people that are in the store making decisions every day actually get excited about my new item launch and want to put it out there. So, Hershey might be onto something because that experience really traveled with me. And it's also really understanding what are the nuances and complications of running a store and how do you start to work around that. It starts to really inform your pack design, how you think about merchandising your items, how you think about even your teams being able to sell that in. It really gives you that experience that allows you to be a better marketer, a better salesperson, a better supply chain partner because you've lived it and you've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, it's the fundamentals of business. It's like, when they say, with athletes, they put you in the minor league or the junior league before you go to the professional league, because you have to learn every facet of the game so that when you get to the big leagues, all of that knowledge goes into every single thing that you do when you're playing. And it's the same thing for business. Like if you've never set foot in a store, then you don't realize that the walkways are 5 feet wide versus 10 feet wide. So if you do that, then like people won't be able to like turn left or turn right because the store is weird. Like all that stuff is so important so that you can have the best sales experience and you'll want to keep buying their product.
Well, it also allows you to know the right questions to ask. Because I think once you get to a certain level, it's not really about knowing everything, which my team will happily tell you. They are all much smarter than I am and know way more about their spaces than I do. But knowing how to ask the right question to help get to the right solution is really a game changer for me and for my teams. And having those experiences allows you to really understand and ask the right questions. I would say the competitive advantage I have for my peer sets, and because we are all brands, so you have to make sure you're thinking about yourself as a brand, is that I've had experiences that allow me to ask really good questions, not because I have the answers, but because I've lived the experience and I'm curious about, what makes this thing tick? What is another way? What's the loophole? How can we solve this problem in a different way than has been thought of already?
I love that. So it's like the art of the great question.
That and critical thinking, you put those two together, you have enough of that on the team, and you can be unstoppable.
The critical thinking piece I think is so important because it's like it's not just what you read in the book, but like using the context of the world as to why you want to be able to do things. And sometimes I feel like that's lost on younger generations.
I think it's not just, if anything, I think Gen Z is questioning a lot more things than we've ever thought of before. I think where I find it really lost right now is in the marketing function, especially marketing at larger organizations. And not because the talent isn't stellar and really smart. It's because the world around us has changed and become so complex. And we are very much training marketers in a very antiquated textbook way of doing marketing. And the creator economy and tech and our access to knowledge has shifted the control to the consumer. And the marketing talent we have today is being still trained in a very traditional form. And it's also, the lack of understanding that answers don't just come from one person. Just because you're the ABM in charge doesn't mean you know all the answers. You have to be the best connector of getting the person who's running search, of getting somebody who's doing social listening, and pulling all of those things together and really being a conductor of getting the best output from your teams. And we're not spending enough time training folks to do that and do it well. But the individuals who are masters of that, or that's their natural strength, those are the ones that you're going to see. They're going to set themselves apart from their peer set.
It's so true. It's that you actually need to get out from behind your desk and go see the world. Otherwise, this will not work for you because it's not the textbooks that you're being taught in are, out of date by the time you graduate.
Exactly.
So,
And folks that can't think on their feet or think around the textbook or outside of it, those are the ones that are struggling. And I often find, especially when we recruit for the top schools, there's nothing wrong with that, not knocking that. It's just that you need to be able to do both. And we spent a lot of time helping our marketers learn how to partner with creatives in a way to get the best creative. But now every element of what we do, whether it's digital or even it's experiential, it requires you to be able to get the best work, to brief the best, and set your talent up to give their best work and not just be cheeseburger order takers. So I think that's what I'm excited about. It's the fun part of my job that I get to push my teams to really find who they are as marketers, but also figure out how to develop talent and get to good ideas regardless of the source.
Yes, I think that's a big part about this is that regardless of the source or that person's not in that particular division, if they come to you with a great idea, don't dismiss it as a bad idea. Get some context around it, get some thinking around it, because hey, it may not be right for you guys right now, but maybe 3 months from now it could make sense. If certain things change. But the ability to foster that environment, it sounds like what you've done, is allow people to sort of great ideas can come from anywhere.
Working on it, girl. Working on it.
So on the everyday, like what is a typical day like for Diana?
I say my primary role is to move shit out of the way so my team can do their best work. And I know that may sound a little crude, but I think that's primarily what I am paid to do. My biggest and most important responsibility is my team, making sure that they're in the best position, whether it's they have the right tools, the right resources, problem solving, moving things out of the way so that they're able to do their best work. I would say the other critical part and what I spend most of my day doing is making sure the goals, the objectives, and the output are very clear. How we get there is going to be different each day, but making sure that clarity is there, that's primarily the role that I play. A lot of that means that I'm spending a lot of time in meetings. I'm spending a lot of time in one-on-one connects with my team. But I try to stay as connected to the business as possible. Another critical role that I bring to the table, especially in these larger, well-established CPG organization, is really bringing, that outside in energy and helping to shape and form the culture of what we need, the environment that we need to produce the best work, but also to ensure that our employees are having the best employee experience. That's typically what I would have to say I spend 80% of my time, if not more, doing each day. And then a large part of my time is spent, varied across the various pillars of my team. And that's what I love about the role that I have, is because there are so many different facets to it. It's never boring. I can start off the day in creative meetings, really deep and looking at creative and, experiential things, and then shift to the next part of the day, looking at analytics and numbers, with the data and advanced analytics team, or going deep on the consumer piece with the insights team. So it really does vary. But the ability to really set my team up so they can do their best work, that's my number one objective.
Pretty awesome and important. I think that's the most, I mean, as leaders, that's what our job is. Set our teams up for success and let them get to do what they need to do, which is awesome. And, fighting some of those battles for them, opening those doors, and yeah, removing some of the shit in the pathway. Because it's like, this does not need to be here. We can just move on from this. Let's focus on this. And it's also, a thing that your team pays attention to, because rather than that shit rolling and hitting them in the face, you're making sure that they are protected from it. And that's when you also know that they'll have your back no matter what.
Yeah, and I'm lucky to have, a really stellar team that really can push and drive on their own. And really what they look for me for is connecting the dots, providing that direction, and giving them the air cover. A lot of the work that we do requires taking risk, influencing people, bringing them along for the ride, but also helping people feel comfortable taking that leap of faith. So in order to allow my team to be more, be less risk averse, it's critical that I provide that level of air cover so that we can take those big risks. And sometimes they don't pay out. But I will tell you, I'd rather have a team of people that's willing to put themselves out there and take the risk, and we figure out how to solve for the problem, because we pretty much 99% of the time we can, than a team of folks that are playing just, not to lose. That to me, that mediocrity is unacceptable. So I'm just really excited and privileged with the team that I get to work with each day.
Yeah, no mediocrity. Like, take that elsewhere. Are you kidding me?
Exactly. No basics out here. I was going to say basic Bettys, but I don't want to offend anybody with the name Betty. I love Betty. Betty, if you're out there, I love you.
but you're still basic. Because it is what it is, Betty. Sorry. So, looking back on, all the really awesome stuff that you've been able to do, talk to me about a time you had a challenge where you're like, there's no way I'm going to get through this. And then you did.
That's like every day. I would say, I'm going to be honest, I'm a very insecure, very risk averse person. And that always surprises people because I present very confident. But I have like this little game that I play in my head, like, what's the worst that could happen? Usually the game ends with me sleeping on my sister's couch. It's pretty comfortable. I think I'll be all right.
Exactly.
But I go through that scenario in my head and then I do it anyway. I would say there are so many risks that I've taken career-wise, leaving. Every time I've left a company that I was in to go to a new company, because I've loved every place that I've worked. I felt like, I could add value, but I also felt connectivity with every place that I worked. So every time I left to go someplace else, it was always a leap of faith and a huge risk. And I would say for me, for my track record, knock on wood, it's worked out every time for me. But those are huge risks that I've taken personally. I think professionally, probably the biggest risk that I've taken is betting on myself and my idea. Typically in spaces that I come into, I am pushing the envelope. I'm pushing the status quo. And oftentimes the things that I'm pushing are things I'm being told you cannot do or will be career limiting. And that usually is the thing that pushes me forward to do it more than I would before. On a daily basis, I think I get told the limitations of what I can do. But I think for myself, just pushing myself and going out there is what keeps me going. That does not mean right after the moment happened, I don't have debilitating anxiety around, why did you say that? That didn't sound great. You shouldn't have done this. You should have done it differently. But at the end of the day, those big risks that I take, betting on myself, has always proven to serve me well.
It's imperative. And I think a lot of us sometimes have the same thing. Like, it's nervous, risk averse, but either way, I'm still going to just go do it because I have to. But also knowing that it will work out. I mean, one of the things that I similarly will be freaked out, like, what is the worst that could happen? My really awesome business coach gave me this great piece of advice a few months ago. And he goes, what happens when it all works out? And I was like, oh, that's actually a better way of thinking of it, as opposed to like, here are all the terrible things that can happen. And so that has sort of been like my sort of new mantra over the last several months. Like, when it all works out, how awesome is this going to be, Laura? And that ability to sort of reframe does help me see things in a bit more of a positive light. Doesn't mean I don't think of all the worst case scenarios still, but on the flip side, I also think about what happens when this actually is super good and like things work out the way they're supposed to, or even better than I ever planned. Like, that's also part of the story as well. So the reframing oftentimes helps.
Oh, yes. I think it's the reframing, and I love that. I'm totally going to steal it. But
Go
I
for
think
it.
the reframing does help. I also think for me, it's you went to your business coach. I've got a team, a board of directors of folks that I can go to. And I think that's why I struggle to say, what is that big risk? Because every time when you have those people around you, they help you realize that those risks that feel so daunting are actually not that big at all.
Yeah, it is so important, especially as, women in businesses, Black women in business. It can be a very lonely place. And so it's really important to have your squad of folks who are, in similar universes, who you can actually talk some of this stuff out to, because otherwise, you'll sort of spin yourself into every kind of terrible scenario and not see that the answer is actually right there. Like, it didn't require a whole lot of brain power. You just needed to have a sounding board or sounding boards to talk it out and be like, oh, all right, it's not that bad. It's not that crazy. I can get this done.
Yeah, I mean, the only and the lonely, we all know that. But I think there are those moments when you're the only that you start to second guess yourself and you're saying, is it me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it me? Like, is this effed up or is it me? And you need to have that place and those people that you can talk, because sometimes it is you and you need to be heard.
True. Yeah.
It's definitely at least the case for me. But a lot of the times it's not. And it's more around, okay, how do I approach this differently? How do I think about this differently? Or when do I decide to walk away completely? And we all have to start making those choices and not feeling like, and often as Black women, we have that trope that is that we're so strong and we can just take everything. Well, we don't need to take all the things. So I think it's important that you have those people to go to. And they don't always have to look like you. I think I'm lucky enough to have just a group of people that are very different, but all very ambitious and all very much focused on, achieving their goals, helping other people, but have a very high value system that allows me to lean on them and leverage them for input, advice, and also have my best interest at heart.
But that's the key part about it. And I think sometimes folks think that a squad can only be this one group of people. It's like, no, it can be a multiracial, multi-generational, multi-gender group of people who would just have your back. Like, if I think about who's in my squad, it is a very wild mix of people. And if I all put them together in the same room together, I don't know if they get along. But when it comes to our sort of our conversations when talking about business and like the other side of the world, there's no one I trust more because they have my best interest and is imperative. And I think, we've seen a lot of this recently with all like the troublesome things around, attacks on D&I, attacks on Black women leaders in places, how we're not supposed to be there because we're obviously D&I hires and that's it, and which is a bunch of BS and we all know it is. It's now more important than ever to have people to talk to who have walked in or who've walked in business shoes, who can help you see the world around you without it being colored by all the madness that's happening on a day-to-day basis, because like it can blind you and leads to stress, anxiety, all the things. And so having that squad is like, that is the number one thing we have to have.
And they're the people that keep you going.
Big
And
cheerleaders.
and I think for me, having those people and finding them and evolving that group, because I have, different folks for different scenarios. And I did bring them together once and it was hilarious. And they actually did all get along. But I do, and that was a really good picture. But I do think that is, I would say, a competitive advantage for me, and also a sanity check. We talk a lot about, mental health. That is a mental health check, because sometimes they're the ones that catch before you do that you're in a situation that you need to leave. And they're the ones that tell you, like, it's time for us to start plotting that exit strategy because it's time to go. So it's good to have those people that can stay consistent with what's going on. I think just being mindful of this doesn't mean you just go and vent and tell them every little thing, that happens. But I think it's really important that you're leveraging a sounding board. And you don't have to do exactly what they say. It is a sounding board. And the
Exactly.
input helps you make the best decision possible.
Yeah, sometimes it's really just saying it out loud to somebody else, like because you've had it
Exactly.
inside, and you like once you say it, you're like, wait, that's what I was pissed about. Oh, okay. Now I say it out loud. Not was it juice not worth the squeeze, whatever the hell that stupid phrase is.
Yep.
Like, yeah,
Yep.
okay. But it's imperative, like I said, like I think there continues to be this like Black women are super women, and I keep saying we're not from Krypton.
No. No.
So I cannot fly. So therefore, I am a human being. I have feelings and I have emotions, and and everyone has their limits. And we can't be put and like as we think about mental health, as we the last few years in post COVID, it's so imperative that we make sure that wherever we are, whatever we're doing is not toxic. And oftentimes we don't see it. And that's why when you talk about it with somebody else, and they're like, do you realize that's some gaslighting behavior or whatever it might be? And because you just said it out loud, you're like, yeah, now that I've heard it myself saying that, yeah, gotta fix this.
Well, and it
Or
also
like,
takes away from our work. I mean, though it is not that we are mystical, magical creatures. Like, we put in the work. And I think that it's important to recognize the work and the energy that went into the output. And I think sometimes that gets negated based off of who's having those discussions and conversations. It's not just the Midas touch. It is about the experiences and the amount of work that we put in to get to where we are today, and not letting anyone forget that. And bringing those receipts into the room, because authority isn't always just granted to us off the bat. I think it's a hard thing for folks to understand who don't happen to walk in the shoes of a Black woman. But what I have found is pushing and having those conversations, and reminding folks of that, and showing up in an authentic way has helped shift the dynamic in those conversations. But we really have to advocate for ourselves, because I still see that happening in the environments that I'm in, and the environments that I know that a lot of my friends are in as well too.
Yeah, it's very much, it's never going away. And, we do have the work twice as hard to get half as much challenge. And, some authority is you walk in and you're like, wait, what? Yeah, this is how it's supposed to be. And then you have to be like, well, actually, this is what the story is, and here's what we're going to be doing here. So it is very important for us to not drive us, no, working ourselves to death, driving ourselves to exhaustion is a no. And it cannot, we no longer live in a world where we can accept that. Like, if it's crazy and it's nuts, gotta go. And develop that crew of people that you can be a smart sounding board for, and then make smart strategic decisions on what you have to do for your next step. Um, and and also whoever's your sounding board, be a sounding board of somebody else. It's cyclical in the way that we have to help each other.
100%.
So obviously you've got tons to do. The world of Diana is very busy, and you're also a working mom. So what does Diana do for Diana? What's your big thing for your self-care?
Oh, actually, I love to be delightfully bored and do absolutely nothing. I'm an avid reader, so I love to read. I love, I'm a Caribbean girl, so I love the sun. I'm more of a pool than a beach person, but I love to be out by the pool. And then I love spending time with my family. Like, we can stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning and just like playing board games and stuff. Like we just know how to have a good time. So, I just like to find joy, in every moment that I can out of life, because, we don't have a lot of moments of joy that we have. And so I try to make sure that I make the most of it, especially with the people around me.
Awesome. So okay, so what are we reading? What's our go-to book in 2024?
So right now I'm reading a Marcus Collins book. Let me get the exact title for you really quickly. Give me 1 second. It is, let's see. It is Marcus Collins For the Culture.
Mm-hmm.
Really excited for that book. He came and spoke at the Forbes CMO Summit. Loved everything that he had to say. So I'm reading that book. I'm bringing him into Colgate. We're gonna do a little book club and kind of kick it off that way, because it's all about us being a part of and infusing our brands into culture. So I'm really excited about that. And then I just can't share the romance novels I'm reading on podcast.
So you're reading a romance. Well, one, Marcus Collins' book is amazing. You're going to love it. And two, romance novels. Do they have Fabio on the cover?
No, that's not my world. That's not my gospel right there. That's not my gospel. No, ma'am.
No, you probably got like Zane or something.
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay, fine. I'm sure they're amazing and warm and fuzzy. How is the pool coming, by the way?
The pool is done. I'm very excited. I've been in it 11 times, so this summer we're going in the pool hardcore.
I love this for you. And so you'll be sitting by the pool reading great books basically the entire summer when you're home.
The entire summer.
This is a good thing. Now, last question for you. Do you have a give and or ask of the audience?
Yeah, my current soapbox right now is I'm really on the access and democratization of AI. Similar to when the internet first came to be, we are at that pivotal point with AI. And it's really critical that we don't allow the architects of AI who has access, the regulators, just to fall in the hands of the few. It must be democratized. And especially if you're a woman of color, or from an underrepresented, underestimated group, make sure that you're getting in there. You understand the technology, you understand the impact that it's going to have, not only on on how we work, but on our lives and our future. And it's important that we make sure it's designed and it works for all of us. Because if we don't plan for the bias in the system, if we don't make sure that creatives of all walks of life have access, we are going to miss out on the opportunity to have some beautiful art, to have some beautiful music, but also to shape how we live and how we work going forward. So that is my plea. We are of a privileged few that have access in the way that we work, and making sure that you're taking the opportunity to not only get involved in how laws are being planned and executed, but also making sure that access is for everyone.
Amen. Because honestly, we were just at the precipice of it all, and if we don't get ahead of this, it is going to be, I'm going to do a search for African doctors, and it'll be an old white man and three dark-skinned, skinny little black children.
Yep.
Because that's what currently happens now on Midjourney, which is horrifying.
And you see, there's a lot of opportunity too, especially in the creative economy, where a lot of the awesome creative that comes from a lot of underrepresented group will be lost if we don't make sure that more people have access. So we can't wait. We cannot miss this opportunity, and we have to all take it upon ourselves to be active and leaders in the space.
Yeah, it's such an imperative, and I'm wholeheartedly agree with you. Because we see, like I said, it's moving so fast. We're now at Midjourney, I think 6 launched this weekend.
Yep.
And so the photos are getting better, the fingers are getting better, but also like we're not going to use creators that have made creators who are creators of color, but they don't exist in real life, because that's another terrifying problem that's actually happening already. Where people are creating online characters who are fully AI generated, and taking those dollars away from actual creators, especially creators of color. So we are at the moment where everyone has to speak out, who has a voice, who has a platform, to make sure that we're in all of these conversations as quickly as possible, and making and making the impact that we need to.
Love it.
So, Lady Diana, it is always a wonderful time having a conversation with you. Thank you so much for sharing your delightful wisdom, that is always so brilliant, with our wonderful audience. We'll put your details in the show notes for folks to connect with you, but I'm so glad we finally got the chance to do this. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. And that is our show.